Hi, you're watching NEWSX. My name is Vineet Malhotra, and welcome to this special broadcast in association with the business world. Well, we have had this platform open for quite some time now, and we have had a number of ideas which have been exchanged. Some of them have gone on to show that the economy is perhaps on an optimistic tangent right now. And we've also heard people saying that, this is in fact time to introspect and for all of us to come together and combine our synergies and make sure that India comes back and revives and survives through this very tumultuous time because of COVID-19 and, of course, other factors as well. We'll introduce some of the youngest and the brightest business minds in the country and get into this debate. We'll talk about liquidity, how to get demand back, and how the business atmosphere in India can be revived and rejuvenated. Is this an opportunity? Is Atmanirbharta is perhaps a cloak that we needed to make sure that our over-dependence on outside forces for the things we consume within India is perhaps lessened? Well, we'll find that out during this very important debate. And let me introduce our panelists on the show. Mr. Sanjay Kadaveru, founder and president of Action for India, AFI, joins us on the program. Ms. Pallavi Srivastav, co-founder and director of ProcCap, is also here with us. Mr. Gautam Chopra, co-founder and CEO of Beto App, joins us on this panel as well. Mr. Satyajit Limai, chief strategy officer, Bankit, is also here with us. Ms. Archana Elapa Villuri, co-founder and CEO of PickRight, joins us as well. And Mr. Avdu Thali, executive director of Spacto Solutions, is here with us as well. And last but not the least, Dr. Anurag Batra, editor-in-chief and of Business World and Exchange for Media, is also going to help me out. He's my partner in crime and my co-anchor for the show. Mr. Sanjay Kadaveru, let me start by asking you a very simple question. Perhaps not a very simple answer to that, but it's a simple question nevertheless, and that is why it makes it so interesting. Most of the questions that are naive are very dangerous in nature as well. How do you think we can revive the economy? And do you think that the developments which have occurred pertaining to the economic revival, even what the government has done through the stimulus package, is enough? Or do you think more needs to be done? Are there invisible enemies that perhaps we cannot see right now? Are there industries which are going to fold up in the next few days and the next few weeks, and we will have nowhere and nothing to do for them because, there is no demand?
Okay. First of all, thank you to you and to Anurag for including me on the panel. And there was a lot in the initial question that you posed. So let me pick a few stands from there and see what I can add to them. I'm Sanjay Kadaveru. I run an organization called Action for India. We work with social entrepreneurs in India and help scale the impact of the work. So I'm not going to kind of don the hat of being a macroeconomist and then try to kind of make some mega predictions about what's going to happen. I'm going to talk a little bit in terms of the kind of things some of our entrepreneurs have done to make a difference in the current scenario. So there are folks in our network who are from domains like education, healthcare, agriculture, livelihoods, fintech, clean tech. So they have, over the years, developed their own products and services. And in this current crisis, they have customized their existing portfolios to make a difference to the country and to affect this crisis positively. To give you a few examples, one is Maneet Gohil of Laltan. He has developed an e-commerce platform for rural artisans and craftsmen. And then he's currently leveraging his existing supply chain to produce PPE, masks. He's already produced about, I think, more than 1.2 lakh face masks and PPE-related equipment, and he's supplying it to people, be it hospitals, be it individuals, to assist in the current scenario. Then there is a healthcare entrepreneur by the name Sujay Santra with a company called iCure. One thing that's forgotten is because of the current crisis, there's been so much of emphasis on patients who are dealing with, if they're tested positive, they've got to be addressed. You're talking about hospital ICUs, ventilators and all that. But other people who are experiencing maybe high blood pressure, hypertension, diabetes, all these other factors which are equally, if not worse in terms of their risk potential for leading to fatalities, they are not being addressed. So iCure has developed some telemedicine solutions where these individuals who are suffering these other problems are able to kind of get some breather in between. And one final example is a lady by the name Ayushi Mishra of Drona Maps. most of the world, if they are looking to kind of get the latest data in terms of the number of positive cases, fatalities globally, they go to the John Hopkins database in the US. She has tried to Indianize this database. She's currently working with the government of Punjab. Now she's taking that digital dashboard for the data, which are the hotspots, where are the trends in these data and so forth. So that's Ayushi Mishra of DroneMap. So these are some examples of the kind of work that the social entrepreneurs in the AFI network are doing in terms of making a positive difference. That doesn't address all the aspects, but I think this is what I'd like to begin with.
Sanjay, since you have one foot in the Silicon Valley and one foot in Hyderabad, tell us, how are investors in Silicon Valley viewing India? Has the sentiment changed? We know that Jio has been able to raise close to $19 billion and is still in the play to raise another $5 to $10 billion. We'll know that Google is looking to invest about $5 billion in Jio. So if you take that away, how is the sentiment? Is it positive? Is it the same it was before COVID? Or is it more bullish? Because China has kind of fallen out of the favor.
Okay. Very valid question, and I don't need to speak about generalities. I can talk about right from what's happening at Action for India. We have just earlier this quarter, about 3 months ago, launched an impact investment fund, primarily leveraging capital from Silicon Valley-based HNIs. And we expect the legal structure is set. We expect to make our first investment in education, healthcare, agriculture-related ventures in the next 30 to 60 days. And so this is talking about my personal experience. But in general, the Indian diaspora in the Valley, I mean, they're very much closely following what's happening in India. They see a huge amount of opportunity for financial returns, but also in terms of an opportunity to kind of make a difference to what's happening on the ground here. A related initiative, which is being supported by a lot of India-based VCs, Act Grants, where some of the biggest venture funds have been involved, be it Axel, be it Sequoia, and so forth. I know...
BW has a story of that.
Oh, okay. So Act Grants has reached out to several individuals in the Valley, and I know some of my own friends from Action for India, Silicon Valley chapter, have contributed there. So people are looking to contribute, either in terms of investment or in terms of philanthropy capital.
And in fact, Sanjay, some of those have been on our shows. For example, Akash Bhatia of Infinite Analytics.
Okay.
So, you know, many of them have been on mine and Vinny's shows. Without referring to that, Act, but I'm aware that, Excel, along with a group of other investors, Kalari, have these 54 companies which have been given grants by them from a fund of about 100 crores. But that is primarily Indian. What I'm wanting to know from you is, with the money coming from Silicon Valley, has the sentiment changed for the better or in any way?
So what you alluded to in terms of China falling apart, and there are so many opportunities with respect to kind of filling in the gaps of the supply chains, be it in manufacturing, be it in terms of services and so forth. So there is definitely an awareness of that and trying to kind of fill those gaps there. And even with respect to the needs in India itself, I mean, such a large fraction of the MSME sector has come apart because of this crisis. And then, is it possible to kind of come out with innovations in fintech where some of these direct benefit transfers from the government can reach them in a much more timely manner, in terms of other aspects of the economy. So people are aware and people are willing to contribute, and opportunities, platforms like Ag Grants, the other platforms are stepping in to kind of make a difference.
But Sanjay, have any of the startups that are in your influence area received an economic stimulus? I want a binary answer. Yes, no. If you know, yes, tell us about those companies. If no, do you think the economic stimulus is reaching the companies?
So the quick answer is, do I know any companies in the AFI network which have benefited from the government stimulus? Yeah. So from the government, I cannot give you a specific example or a quotation. I think that government stimulus is primarily kind of meant for the migrant laborers and the true bottom of the pyramid individuals and people who are the founders of startups in the AFI network. I am not personally aware in terms of how they've been impacted because of this, because of the recent government stimulus.
Okay.
Okay.
Pallavi?
All right. Yeah. Pallavi Srivastav, same question to you. What's your reaction? Where do we stand today, and how do we get out of this?
Hi, first of all, thank you so much for having me here, Vineet and Anurag. Just coming to, I can talk from, just the way Sanjay spoke from what he's doing, looking at our business and what we do, as a company, we are into financing the value chains of large corporates. So if we look at, most of our corporates that we work with, are in consumer durables, white goods, brown goods segments, and auto. Most of this spending from the consumer side is discretionary spending, so which is what is to somewhat affected. And looking at the current situation, as we started seeing some kind of a relaxation in lockdown by end of June, we are also seeing that the demand is picking up from the consumers. Maybe it's a result of some pent-up demand that was already there because of economic activity completely being stalled in April and May months, but it's slowly picking up. And if we look at some of our customers right now, while we are seeing that the discretionary spending is going to go low, we are seeing that demand is almost 80% to where it was. Like I said, it may be a result of the pent-up demand for the last 2 months, but I think going forward, we are not going to see any positive movement in the next quarter at least. So all our corporate partners who are planning for a good summer season are now postponing the purchase, and the plan is for now the Diwali season. So we are seeing some kind of an impact coming into our industries. Having said that, if we look at the overall stimulus package, which is providing the liquidity, solving the liquidity challenge to a large extent, I mean, at least that's what the intention has been. I think for us, the important thing to really look at would be how can that really translate into increasing the stimulus in terms of the demand. So right now, the whole expenditure is going to be, the stimulus in terms of expenditure is less than 1% of the GDP, compared to the 10% or 20 lakh crores that's been announced. It really doesn't translate to increasing demand. So I think for us, it's important that government takes some measures to enhance that, put some money in the hands of the people. Of course, there'll be implications, from macroeconomic point of view in terms of the fiscal deficit, etc. But those are some of the measures that will really help our industry.
Gautam, okay, all right. Gautam Chopra, same question for you. Do you think that the government has been able to make any kind of an impact with the stimulus package? Because obviously, this idea of contingent liability has blown hot and cold. Some people have found it to be a genius idea, whereas some people think that it's not struck a big chord with the MSMEs.
Right. So I think, first of all, I think it's a good start, perhaps by the government to be able to look at this sector and really start thinking about what will help to stimulate demand, as well as the whole sector, bringing the sector back to where it was pre-COVID. Having said that, I think what Anurag posed the question, I personally haven't come across any entrepreneur who has directly benefited from the scheme.
Well, yesterday we had two on our show who did benefit.
Great, so that's fantastic. But that compliments
timely intervention by
Anurag. In the last 2 months, there have been only 4 that have benefited. So
right.
0. So in the last 2 months that we've done this show, 2 and about 2 more, 4 have benefited.
So Anurag, looking at the glasses half full, at least 4 ventures have benefited and have continued to survive through the crisis. But I must compliment. I think, having said that, I wrote an article previously on this. I think I must compliment the entrepreneurial spirit of the Indian entrepreneur. We go through hell of a lot of problems, whether this be financing, demand, price sensitivity of the Indian consumer, supply constraints, etc. But I must say, we are a VC-backed company, and in our group of other portfolio companies, many of them faced a lot of issues. But I must compliment, they timely innovated, timely pivoted, and not one so far I have heard of has sort of stopped operations altogether. So I think first and foremost, this is a compliment to the entrepreneurial spirit in India, and I think it sort of resonates with this entire entire push on Atma or self-reliant India, Atmanirbhar India as well, because I think it demonstrates that I think if left to us, we can solve the real problems of India, because the consumer as an individual consumers are becoming more mature. The demands, of course, are very peculiar in India. The needs are very peculiar. So if we don't solve for those issues, and COVID has also allowed newer opportunities to surface which did not exist before, right? And Sanjay spoke about a patient population who might be hypertensive or diabetic, was sort of not attended to. Well, that provided a lot of good opportunities to folks like us. So I run a company which is a diabetes care platform. We've seen an increase in the engagement of the patient population with our platform. Interestingly, we saw trends where in the earlier part of lockdown, people's sugar levels on our platform started to rise. Of course, that was a fear of anxiety, stress that was building up. But now, over the last 1 odd month, people are starting to reconcile with the new normal, and their sugar levels have improved. The same way, I think the customer adoption in terms of new technologies. I just yesterday I was really happy. My mom, for the first time, she's close to about 65. She started buying plants on Amazon. She had never transacted on Paytm or on Amazon Pay before. So the user adoption of technology, even at that age demographic, is sort of increasing exponentially. Whether you look at EdTech, whether you look at any of the other tech platforms, I think that is really the strong point that we need to take forward coming out of this crisis, and then really be able to come out strongly from this.
Thank you, Gautam. Satyajit, financial services is such a large part of the economic activity, and liquidity is what has been kind of sucked away from the market. Tell us, what is your initial response to the economic stimulus? Where do you see the economy headed? And how do you bring back liquidity?
Anurag, thanks for having me, and Vineet. I want to respond in this way that so quickly, I represent an organization called Bankit, and it serves the send, spend, lend, and invest needs of emerging middle class and migrant labor. So we really talk about the rural and class B, class C, and rural settings, and 70% of India which is into farming. So very clearly we see a lot of patterns happening there. But coming back to the question that you have asked on economic stimulus, I believe the expectations from economic stimulus need to be calibrated first. Maybe economic stimulus is being referred to as a panacea or a universal painkiller, which is supposed to bring us back to pre-COVID days. But let us look at pre-COVID days as well. A lot of sectors were already in stress. A lot of businesses were already in stress. So if we categorize the businesses into three parts, one which were doing really good anyways pre-COVID, one who were struggling to grow in any case, and one which were struggling to survive and were anyways trying to challenge the Darwin's theory of survival of the fittest in any case. Now comes the COVID scenario, and when we talk about economic stimulus, are we really talking about one tablet to fit all the situations of these companies? Probably no. Some companies in any case without COVID would have been challenged. So definitely COVID is expediting the challenge for those companies. At the same time, those companies who have not adapted themselves to the new baseline might, with economic stimulus, are we going back to the old baseline? No, we are going to a new baseline. The rules of the games itself have changed. So if I look at the effect of medicine on a patient, it also depends on the health of that patient, right? So economic stimulus might do good for those entrepreneurs who are going to adopt to the new rules of the game that this COVID has put on us. So we are really not going back irrespective of how much economic stimulus is put in. I think we are going to a new base. Secondly, I think the entire impact of COVID is yet to be found out. The bottoming out or peaking down of COVID is yet to be seen. So I think another...
That's a valid point. That's a valid point. Absolutely.
Economic stimulus might be the way we look at it, might be the partial scenario that we see now. And I think once we spend another 90 days pre-Diwali, because the monsoon has been good, green shoots will start coming in. It is then that we need to see what is the residual entrepreneurship. And I am an incurable optimist, and I have not seen anything like COVID before, nor has 70% of India has seen. So probably another economic stimulus will bring in a long-term corrective measure. Today, the economic stimulus has served its purpose if those businesses and those families are saved, which would have gone irreversibly into an abyss from where they wouldn't have come back. So from my point of view, if businesses and families have survived because of the stimulus has served its package.
Satyajit, do you think that, even Sanjay pointed that out, that a direct benefit from the government would perhaps, bend the need of the hour? Other countries have done it.
Yes, yes. So there, I think we have seen very clearly lot of migrants and lot of those migrants who have gone back to their families. They keep on coming back to our Atmanirbhar entrepreneurs, the business correspondents and the agents who are working in these villages who offer financial services. We very clearly see the withdrawals happening from the direct benefit transfers. We have seen families who are dependent on these benefits and they have benefited. We have heard the stories, people who might have thought of taking extreme measures. They are there and they are aspirational and they would think of reskilling themselves and coming back into mainstream.
Okay, Archana, as an entrepreneur, how do you respond to the economic stimulus and where do you see the Indian economy headed?
Yeah, thank you for having me on the show. And I'm a CEO and a startup entrepreneur for a platform called PickRight. PickRight is an advisory marketplace. We are trying to bridge the gap for everyone masses where they can start investing in across all the asset classes, which is currently only eligible or applicable for HNIs and ultra HNIs. So we are trying to create an equal platform for everyone in these uncertain times where we are looking at pensionless jobs and all of that. So coming to economic stimulus, let me answer. As a startup, we did not receive any stimulus because we don't even be qualified for it. We are neither SME, MSME, and we are a very early stage. Neither we are VC funded. We are actually, we are bootstrapped, and just recently we raised very small seed fund. So it was very difficult for us to get into this COVID times, to get in straight into the fire, to start raising funding and success. And luckily, like how my other colleagues on the panel, other panelists have mentioned, since ours is a complete digital, no-touch platform, we could manage to get funding and able to survive. So the main opportunity of COVID, what it has given is to be going into the digital side of it. Everything can be solved digitally. When I was in Oracle or earlier in my earlier jobs, for every meeting we had to take a flight, pay a business class ticket or an economy class, and have to land in Silicon Valley, SFO, New York to close a client and come back. Now a Zoom call suffices it. Well, that's a bad news for a travel industry and a hospitality. Well, for a good news for someone who has a limited time and can focus on more innovations which can be done, which is helpful to the grassroots, right from the grassroots to everyone in the pyramid can be touched digitally. Scale is super important. And that's where COVID has given PickRight that opportunity. But what can be done in the stimulus side where we can be benefited, and strongly this is my opinion. I feel daily in and out, I see paying a lot of GST 18%. It really pains me. And being an early stage startup and very early into revenues, we cannot even claim or get the credit back. And so a simple tax thing, which is easy to be understood, can be waived off, which can directly impact every entrepreneur, no matter how the small or big the size is. If that is there, then it gives a lot of runway and a level creating field for small startups, and it must be much easier for us to function. So that's what my take and on the economic stimulus.
Mr. Abdul Tali, you know the question. What is your response, and how do you look at the current situation? There's obviously an atmosphere which is challenging to the extent that we have never been in such an atmosphere before. And like they say, that desperate times call for desperate measures.
Yeah. So thanks, first of all, Vineet and Ajay, for Anuj, for inviting me here.
Taking the question, I'll just try to correlate this question, first of all, to the business sector that we are operating into. So I'm a part of Spocto Solutions, which is AI ML platform-based company, and we do provide services for banking and financial NBFCs, which is basically providing a support on the collections. So coming straight to, we all know that, okay, I mean, there is a moratorium period which has been extended by the bank, and what all that is going on. Yes, I mean, the worst affected sector, I would say, of course, are banks and financial institutions who have given loans and now have taken moratorium onto it. The brighter side, what I see is of this, even coming particularly more to the industry, is banking specifically, is the moratoriums, though it has been extended and given. We conducted a survey, very recently, as to whether customers want moratorium or how many of them really want moratorium. So, when moratorium was declared, the people understood that, okay, this is probably coming as a free, EMI is waived, somebody thought interest is waived, and all such things were thought. And surprisingly, when we did the research, we understood that, many of a large percentage were thinking that we do not want moratorium, rather we would pay, because it is coming at a very, very high cost. Now, the stimulus which is being given by the government, of course, coming, it has given a lot on the supply side, basically for increasing the supply chain and all. But on the demand side, how much has it gone into the hands of the people, or how much is it creating the demand side? That is something which I feel has really a little more need to be done on that side, more specifically, because the consumer spending forms a high part of our GDP, and if supposing the demand is not going to increase, it's going to affect us badly. Coming to moratorium, I feel that there's a discussion and the rumors going on that banks probably will give, RBI will give further moratorium. I would personally feel that more moratorium should not be given, because two reasons. That is going to spoil the consumer behavior of the payments also. That's going to create a far bad effect onto the banking industry. Rather, they should, RBI, in my opinion, I would say that should think of restructuring the loans, or maybe redefining the definition of NPA provisions, and that's how the economy can be better.
Okay,
right.
I want to go back to Satyajit. Now, Satyajit, one of the biggest worry has been demand. An economy is built on the back of demand, because you deal with rural and semi-rural areas or semi-urban areas, which are relatively less impacted by COVID. Tell us about how is the demand there. If there are data to support that demand is much more in those areas than in urban areas.
Sure. Anurag, let me say that there is a digital fault line between urban and rural, and a large part sits something like a rural setup, which is rural settings, or the industries, say agro and dairy, but we have a good amount of urban self-serviced deliveries happening. So that's rural. So the second point that I wanted to bring in to answer your question was the digital infrastructure crashes drastically. You travel 100 kilometers away from an urban center and the infrastructure goes down. So I see that so far, and see, all of us are customers on one hand, and we do something or the other, some product or some service on the other hand to sell. Very clearly, we all see both the sides, and we see that our consumption of certain things has gone down in COVID. On the other hand, we are trying to sell some product or some service, and we are trying to see why the demand is going down. I think it is, one coin, two sides scenario. But to answer your question, the rural segment is affected quite a lot, because it was a services oriented economy, as against the agro economy on the rural side, which largely is dependent on the rains and the produce. As against that, we have a lot of MNCs on the urban side. So we see that urban seems to be the soft target which is affected the most, and the demand has affected in that area significantly.
Okay. And coming back to you, Gautam, the healthcare sector itself in the last 4 months has seen a loss of 15,000 crores, not counting the neighborhood clinics. They are the SMEs of the healthcare sector. You talked about the losses to hospitals because, the cases of normal healthcare disorders were not being treated to. Now, tell us, how do you bring the health of the healthcare sector back? The government has talked of more investments in the healthcare. There was a provision in the package, but is that good enough? What should be brought to healthcare sector so that, if at all there is a pandemic of any nature in the future, as a lot of experts are saying, that this is not a black swan event, it is a grey rhino event. It may occur again. So what should be done with the healthcare sector so that both lives and livelihoods should be protected?
No, I think, if you look at India, of course, our preparedness as far as the healthcare sector itself was concerned was severely tested, right? Of course, I think the initial phase of lockdown allowed for some states, and perhaps some performed better than the other, to be able to create the capacities that were really required, right? Of course, having said that, overall footfalls in hospitals apart from COVID has substantially gone down. Naturally, there will be revenue losses not only for the next couple of months, but for the foreseeable future, because people are still hesitant to go to a doctor. Even if somebody has a common condition, they would perhaps refrain to go and see a doctor. So, in our immediate vicinity, we would have, certainly all of us would have encountered.
But is telemedicine okay to do that? Some common cold or irritation you have or a burn. Some of the things can be dealt with telemedicine, but not the more serious of issues.
Absolutely. So I think that is where somewhat, triaging effect would start to seep in, because of course, people even, having certain more severe conditions have been sort of procrastinating going to a doctor or going to a hospital visit, because imagine if they're going to a hospital, their immune system is already weakened, right? So it also poses severely higher risks. And I think that is the intention with which the government has been sort of segregating COVID-specific hospitals with the others, wherein people with other serious conditions can at least be attended to. So I think to be able to, of course, stimulate back the push on the healthcare sector, certainly a lot more, and preparing us for the future. I think certainly a lot more capacity needs to be built, because there is already a significant amount of divide between the urban as well, or forget about urban, but metro and other tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 as well. And you can't, unfortunately, when events like COVID are going to become far more regular, you can't just have all the capacity situated and concentrated in a hub, but it has to be far more spread out, because otherwise the impact that we are expecting, and positive health impact that we're expecting, not only from conditions such as COVID, but also, for instance, diabetes, hypertension, etc. When you realize that, there are states like Rajasthan, UP, etc., who are in any case not, or sort of ill prepared for non-communicable diseases. And the non-communicable diseases are actually on the rise. And if you sort of draw correlation, COVID has actually impacted people with diseases like hypertension, etc., far greater. So hence, it is absolutely critical to be able to invest in both primary as well as secondary infrastructure, not only concentrated in the urban areas, but be able to incentivize, healthcare providers, whether these be, physical infrastructure, physical therapeutics, or even digital providers, to be able to take healthcare to a far-reaching audience than just, concentrated to certain segments.
Is there a number that should be invested in the healthcare sector for the next 5 years, 10 years?
And I think, I think the amount the government is spending in terms of the percentage it has towards the GDP, at least it needs to be doubled or tripled to be able to make somewhat an impact in terms of our preparedness going forward.
What you're saying is essentially government spends between 1.5% to 2% on health,
which is very low if you compare it to the other developing nations.
It's about 5-6%. In some countries, up 10%, but average is about 6%. Sanjay, I want to ask this question to you, Pallavi, Archana, three of you. In the last 4 months, some of the startups, their revenues have dried up to zero or close to zero if they are not in a hospitality sector or QSR or travel or airlines where they're zero. But in some other sectors, they're 10%, 15%, 20%. Plus, they have not been able to raise monies. So there is a fear that some of these startups may close down because the revenues are low and they haven't been able to raise monies. What do you have to say that? Is that a fear that is exaggerated or is it a real fear?
Before I answer that specific question, Anurag, just a comment with respect, taking a step back, and we are having this discussion on the economy. But really, this is more of an intellectual exercise. The COVID thing in India, we are nowhere near the peak. The numbers keep rising. And whatever we do, I think it'll be one step forward, two steps backward until we have a meaningful, how do we address this current situation? I mean, is it in terms of this preventive measures? Is it in terms of developing this therapeutic solutions, or is it in terms of the vaccine development? And actually, in India, we have seen steps in each of these dimensions, right? The vaccine, most of you would have heard, the Hyderabad-based Bharat Biotech has been in the advanced stages in terms of this vaccine development. And my own former employer, Hetero Drugs, which was one of India's largest generic drug manufacturing company, it's developed a generic for remdesivir. I think the code name COVID-4 is the name of the company. So these things are happening, and again, with respect to beat the social distancing.
On our show, we clearly discussed that the debate between lives and livelihoods shouldn't be there. And we said, and some of our startups have supported the kind of areas that are needed before we get to livelihood, which is testing, which is contact tracing, which is about setting up temporary healthcare infrastructure, which is about tools and equipment for the new normal, which is masks, PPE equipment, ventilators. So we understand that testing and better healthcare, and in some cases, behavioral change is the answer to. We understand that, but at the same time, there is lives are being lost to COVID, and lives are also being lost to loss of livelihood.
Fair enough.
So I think it's unfortunate that we have to kind of do a debate around it, but we're very mindful of the fact that there is problem outside. There is loss of lives, there is loss of livelihood, but we are hopeful at some stage COVID shall go away, and this shall too pass. So in that context, we're focusing on the economy.
And just building on top of what I said, each of these things that I mentioned, be it the vaccine development at Bharat Biotech, be it the generic for the drugs like the remdesivir at Hetero Drugs, and be it one of my own AFI portfolio companies, Ecozen. This guy was developing a cold chain storage solution in the agri-tech domain. Now, once these vaccines are made, you need cold chain storage solutions for the delivery and distribution of these vaccines, the last mile delivery. So he's been kind of developing, customizing his existing solutions with AFI Self. We are trying to get him connected with some people in the UK side. As you know, the Oxford team has been at the forefront of one of the teams that is at the forefront of developing the vaccine development. There is this Moderna in Cambridge, Massachusetts. So we are trying to do all these things. So this is not about just saving lives. This can be an economic development opportunity as well, building on top of the solutions that are being developed. And talking about the economy, going back to the question that you said, yes, these people are under severe stress. Their revenues are floundering. The ability to raise capital is being impacted. But the ability to raise capital, for instance, when I was speaking with some of my VC friends, it's not because they have become a little bit anxious in this new environment. Generally, when they make an investment, they meet with the entrepreneur face to face. They do a field visit. These kind of things have become more challenging in this scenario. And the advice that most investors are giving to the portfolio companies, very clearly, cut your costs, have a larger runway, somehow, stay through this storm it could be 6 months, 12 months, 18 months. Don't, be aggressive in terms of massive expansion and so forth. What more, could these entrepreneurs do to tide the storm? That's something, it's still a solution in evolution.
And they're also waiting, watching which sectors, whether some of the sectors will get redefined, will the metrics get redefined. So, except technology, I think all other sectors are seeing a wait and watch approach.
Yeah, Anurag, we only have about 7 minutes left on to the
I
show.
want to ask the same question to Pallavi and the same question to Archana.
Let's get on with asking our panelists the important question: how do we get the economy back, and how long will it take?
Yeah. So
Anurag, just to answer, sure. So Anurag, just to answer that question, sure. So I think what we need to really understand, and we are all aware, like you're rightly pointing out, it's an unprecedented situation. It's a pandemic, and by definition, it means that it's going to have long-term consequences. We cannot predict for sure what's really going to be the situation of the economy, of the businesses. A year or 2 years down the line is when we'll get to see the real impact. But having said that, I think what we really are trying to do as businesses, as individuals, as economies is coming back to achieving some kind of a normal, which is maybe perhaps what we left back in February or before. I think what we really need to keep in mind is that we don't really have a parallel or a rule book. This is a different situation. None of us have seen this in our lifetimes. So a different response is required. We are all trying our best to kind of respond in the best possible way. As startups, I think trying to increase the runway as much as possible. As individuals, trying to cut down on expenses and trying to elongate our runway and same goes for economy. I think overall, the idea to get back to a normal, maybe a shift needs to be made in the terms of what that normal is going to look like. As the lockdown is lifting, we are seeing that we are getting the new normal is looking like we're going to wear masks in public, right? A new normal is where people are going to sit in offices at a certain distance, and in factories people are working at distance. So social distancing, and so it's going to define a next normal for us, and whether it is a startup, whether it is an economy, an individual, what is really important is, if businesses which are already have flaws, which already have a challenge, or individuals who haven't been planning it well, or economies which were already going down, need to find some drastic measures and reinvent themselves. And this is a time when really the test is going to happen if you're a strong business, a strong economy, trying to come out of this whole situation in a much stronger way. I think that is much more important than coming back to a certain kind of a definition of normal.
Sure.
We're hearing all these different kind of.
We understand it's time to pivot, and I keep saying on the show, for the first time, entrepreneurs are thinking about cost being lesser than revenue.
Okay. Satyajit, what do you think? Do you think it's the speed of our comeback that will matter, or the style in which we come back?
Yeah, I think it's a good question, and it is never one of the two, and it is going to be a combination. But one quick idea to roll out by the government is to create an infrastructure of performance, which is going to be local. Let's say government partners with large businesses and rolls out co-working spaces in class 2, class 3 and rural areas, and becomes partner for land, plant, building machinery, and allows the local entrepreneurship to develop, because each entrepreneur is an aggregation of jobs. Each entrepreneur is going to create a lot of jobs. So I believe if the government is able to set up an infrastructure of performance by partnering into capex, by offering land, plant, building machinery, so it is style, it is speed, and it is infrastructure, especially local infrastructure in all class 2, class 3 and rural settings. I think that can make a long-term impact. We should respond in the Olympics of business by becoming competitive and not just react to a country or two, and really make sure that our entrepreneurship is given a full chance and full infrastructure to perform. I think that answers a question that it's not only going to be speed and style, but speed, style with a huge infrastructure for the entrepreneur to perform locally.
Archana and Abdul, I want to come to you. Archana, I asked the same question about startup survival. Yeah. You said you're bootstrapped, you started to get revenues, but the state of economy worries you.
Yeah,
and Abdul, in your sector, you deal with SMEs because you're in the collections business where you utilize AI and ML to look at what the data is. So your quick comment, Archana, on how are startups dealing with it?
Yeah, so as you rightly said, right, startups are going through a lot of stress, and there are layoffs where I see, because I come from startup ecosystem, worked in startups earlier. So there will be layoffs, and this is going to be new normal. The only way, the one thing what you said is, apart from tech, everyone is wait and watch. Now it is the time to embed tech into every other sector. Today, The tech is embedding is a very less, around 20-30%. So now tech is not really something different. Tech has to embed in everything, every
just a couple of minutes left before we end the show. So
and
request everyone to be brief.
I'll just finish with one line. The only way we are all going to be new normal, the government plays a larger role in bringing trust, testing, transparency, so we all can go back and get back to normal. Staying in lockdown, every 1 day of lockdown is going to cost us 30 days of going back in the economy. So I think it's major role, trust on governance, and government is transparent, testing, temporary makeshift hospitals. And that's where we will inch back very fast and we'll be thrice as we are last 2 years in next 12 to 18 months.
Sure. Avdut, your comment on what you see around yourself.
Yeah, so coming straight to your question, considering the time is less, yes, ours being, the such times of difficulties, I feel as a time where there can be transformation. So we have seen that our company specifically, we have, touch wood, we have not cut any salaries, or rather, we have not fired anyone in the company, and rather, we found that this is an opportunity for us to really sign more clients, also more banks, because we have converted everything into digital. So it's all about the transformation in this particular time. Anybody who is into the space of digital, I think it's an opportunity, because even the recent reports, you must have seen that the payments through digital has really spurred up like to any extent.
Sure, so, that we can see happening. Quick comment, quick meaning quick. Where will the Indian economy be 90 days from now?
90 days.
Yes. Good, bad, worse. Satyajit Limme, good, bad, worse in 90 days.
Good, I think green shoot level.
Okay, you were saying that there may be some recovery that may start. Yes. Pallavi?
So I think, Anurag, very quickly, next 3 months are going to be a significant hit in the economic activity. But the second half of the financial year, we'll see some kind of a non-returning from the dip stage.
Archana?
I would say it won't be bad, but it's neither be good. It will be a little bit bad because the quarter results would be coming.
Avdut Thali?
I think it will be average, bad, good, I can say.
So, all right. More optimism in this panel today.
Yeah, I think it will be getting geared up to pick up 3 months from now.
Okay. Last but not the least, Sanjay, you have the last laugh.
I'm the eternal optimist, Anurag. So even in the short term, 60, 90 days, I think until we hit the peak, you will see more and more bad news. But after that, in the second half of the financial year, as one of the panelists mentioned, I hope that things will be on the
because there is 1 minute, I just say that in the next 90 days, I feel the economy will be very tough. Because
we don't have a minute, but you can take half a minute.
Lack of money over the next 60, 90 days. But post-Diwali start to pick up, and hopefully early next year you will see a V-shaped recovery.
All right. In fact, thank you for that optimistic conclusion, Anurag, and thank you everyone for being a part of this amazing debate and this really insightful conversation. Thank you for joining us.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NEWSX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.